My name is Audrey. I'm here all the way from San Francisco, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. And today I'm talking to you about real-life use cases of blockchain technology, as well as what needs to happen for this to become really mainstream. So you all know about cryptocurrency, right? It's in the news. You know, Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, Bitcoin's over $20,000, Bitcoin's now over, under 6,000. There's a new millionaire over here, there's ICO mania over there. But what gets talked less about in the news anyway are actual use cases of blockchain technology. And although cryptocurrencies are using blockchain technology, there are many more things you can do with it besides just cryptocurrency. So when you think about blockchain, you probably don't think about places like this. And this is a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. And what's really cool about this is Azraq, actually. The United Nations has come up with some pretty cool applications of blockchain technology. The World Food Program is a UN agency. They feed 80 million people worldwide. And as of January of this year, more than 100,000 people in Pakistan and Jordan have been redeeming their assistance through a blockchain-based system. And so how that works is that you'd go buy your groceries, and you don't need an ID, you don't need money, you just show up, and the machine will scan your iris, so you just need to bring your face. And then it will confirm who you are, it will confirm what rations you have, and you go along your merry way. WFP has transferred more than $1.3 billion in benefits, that's about 30% of the total aid, to local banks, which is a very inefficient process. And a lot of times you lose a lot of that to corruption. And the UN estimates about 30% is lost to corruption. So early results have been really good. Early results of this program has shown to save costs by 98%, which is really huge. And so in a world where you need a government identity and where you need a bank account in order to do things like get a job and live a secure life, what do you do when you don't have those things? Blockchain can help in these instances. So what can you use blockchain for? A lot of things, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff today, but just realize that people are using blockchain in very innovative ways, and what we discuss today is just scraping the surface of what you can do with it. And we'll talk about specific examples, too, of companies doing these things, but what are some things you can do? Well, you can prove that you own your house, you own your car, proof of ownership. We can look at the security settlement that exists today. It takes a long time, something like 2 to 7 days. With blockchain, it could be basically instant. With identity, right now we rely on governments, third parties, companies to attest who we are. With self-sovereign identity, we have control of that data ourselves, and we don't need a third party. There's a whole idea of decentralized computing. So right now, we're used to computing the cloud, right? AWS runs all these cloud servers. You can go rent computing, but that's still through Amazon, still through a centralized party. And so what we can do with blockchain is, let's say I have a computer, I've got spare storage space, I've got spare computing power. Now, if you wanted to use some of that, you could go ahead and use it and just pay me directly. There's also the idea of decentralized IoT, Internet of Things. So now we have all these devices. They're all connected online. And now they can interact directly with each other, as well as transact. Supply chain is a really big deal for manufacturers, especially in today's global economy, when you're making one product. Along the way, maybe part A is made here, part B is made here, it gets put together over here, part C. It's a long process, and if everyone is using a common way to track it, you can produce that final good with that tracking in place. And also, you can talk about decentralized media and content. So the problem with digital goods right now is that they're very easy to copy, right? So if you are a creator, it's hard to control where your content gets put, who uses it. So you can start controlling licensing and use. So today, I've broken out everything in a couple main areas. Financial services, identity, supply chain, kind of decentralized apps, government impact, and finally end with what do we need to happen before we see blockchain really become pervasive and mainstream. So financial services. I said I wouldn't talk about crypto today, but it all started with a cryptocurrency application, Bitcoin. And so naturally, there are a lot of financial services applications that make a lot of sense. And this fact is not lost upon financial service companies. You can see that they've invested pretty heavily in blockchain relatively early on. And if you see the logos here, you'll see a lot of companies that you know and love, maybe not love, but at least know. And so you'll see a lot of investment that happened in 2016. And here, I briefly mentioned clearance and settlements, and it's okay if you can't really see what's going on here. The point of this slide is to show that in all of these things, whether you're settling securities, credit cards, or even just simple payments between people, there are, a lot of processes. There's a lot of different parties involved. So every time you have something like this happen, blockchain has the opportunity to help streamline. And something like if I'm just paying another person, a lot of times the banks don't have a direct line to each other. So even in that very, very simple case, you need a switch bank in the middle. So if we're talking about enterprise use cases in financial services, there's a whole lot of different groups or blockchain consortia that have come together to try to figure out how to best use this technology for their companies. And so specifically in financial services, you'll want to know about R3 and Ripple, who are working on Corda and Ripple accordingly. So the main difference between these is R3 is a consortium of different banks. They're working together on Corda, which is an open source platform. Right now, I think they're on version 3. You can go check it out yourself. And a commercial version is coming later this year. By contrast, Ripple is a private company, so they're focused on large payments between banks as well as interledger settlement. On the consumer side, there's a lot going on as well. So just a few examples here. Starting on the left, Coins.ph. That is a Philippine company. So for those of you who are not familiar, a lot of Filipinos leave the country to work and remit their payments back home to their families. So that can be hard, but now with Coins.ph, which has Bitcoin running in the back, that makes it a lot easier. In addition, there's a large unbanked population in the Philippines. And this helps address that as well. So if someone sends you a payment and you don't have a bank account, you can actually get a one-time use ATM code so that even though you don't have an account with the bank, you can go to that bank's ATM, put in the code, get your money that way. Or you can have your money sent to a local store, and you can pick it up that way. You can pay for your bills using this. You can buy mobile minutes. You can buy game credits. So all these things that are traditionally associated with having some sort of bank account, you don't really need anymore. Up at the top, BitPesa has been around for a little while. They are also dealing with cross-border payments, so now specifically in Africa and in Kenya and Tanzania. So before, it would take quite a lot of time, up to maybe 10 days, to transfer money. It'd be quite expensive, about 5 to 10% of the amount that you're sending. Now with BitPesa, because they've got Bitcoin running in the back, it is 3% and basically instant. BitPay is working on helping merchants accept Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And then on the more consumer side versus just merchants, 10x has kind of got this a wallet, but attached to a card. So the idea is that you can go and spend cryptocurrency like you would just going shopping anywhere. In the area of loans and credit, there's a lot going on as well. So Bloom is working on credit scoring based on Ethereum. So, in the US, anyway, we've got 3 large credit scoring companies, and their job is to tell people if I'm a good risk, right? Have I paid my credit cards on time? Have I paid my mortgage? Have I, paid my car loans? But the problem with this is that you have these large, centralized, just caches of data that hackers just really want to get at. It's very sensitive data, and there's a lot of it. And 145 million people were affected in the Equifax hack, including me. So that's annoying for me, because now I have to monitor my identity, make sure no one's stealing it, and doing, opening bank accounts, stuff like that. ETHLend is also using Ethereum. They are building a peer-to-peer lending platform using smart contracts. So now you have the borrower, you have the lender, they're interacting directly through the use of a smart contract. Also in the lending space, you have Salt. So a lot of people who have Bitcoin, they view it as kind of digital gold, a store of value. You don't want to go out and buy coffee with your Bitcoin, right? But you also need money for things like paying rent, buying houses, whatever it is. So Salt allows you to use your cryptocurrency as collateral, and get a loan in fiat. So you can, put down your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your Ripple, and in return, you get a loan in US dollars, in euros, in renminbi. In the area of identity, there's a lot going on as well. So here's an example of a few different companies working in that area. So Civic uses the biometric capabilities on your phone to show you are who you are. And so this way, when you're online and you're going about, you don't need accounts, you don't need passwords, which is great because we all have too many of those, right? Over here, that's Uport. That is the consensus take on identity. So one really cool thing that they're working on is they have a trial with the city of Zug in Switzerland. And so what you can do is you sign up for Uport, you bring your traditional materials, your identity, paperwork to a government office. They will verify that you are who you are. And then once you have this set up, you can now use just your digital identity to do things like vote or prove residence, which is pretty cool. Sovereign, ID 2020 are also in this space, and they have large partners like Microsoft, Accenture, and IBM. So the very cool, interesting thing about identity is that if we don't rely on other people for identity, in theory, I could control all the data about me, right? So on one hand, I could have my shopping data here, my medical records here, the fact that I'm a woman here, my age here, and I can decide piecemeal who I want to allow to have access to a particular piece of data. I can say, all right, this particular piece, I allow you to have access for this amount of time, for this purpose. I can revoke it. I can choose to get paid for it if I want. So that's kind of interesting, especially in an era where we've got social media companies that are doing things with their data that we may not like very much. So here is an example from Blockchain Week in New York, which just happened, and this is using Civic.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Ken Bozak. Here to talk about cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency accessories, and this is the cryptocurrency accessory of Consensus 2018 here in New York City. And we're going to show you how to get a beer by proving we are of age, but by concealing our identity, by utilizing blockchain technology right here, the Internet of Things. So I open the app with my finger, and I unlock it. All I have to do is scan this QR code that's asking my phone, that's asking Civic, is this guy qualified to get whatever's behind this QR code? The answer should be yes. I authorize the communication of that information of exactly how old am I to this machine without it releasing any, it don't know if I'm a guy, a girl, it doesn't know what my name is, it just knows I'm 21 or older, not even exactly anything more than that. And here, I have beer. That's freedom, that's American.
Yeah.
Tastes like crypto.
Yeah, beer. So, supply chain is very interesting for people in manufacturing. As a matter of fact, SAP did a survey. They have a blockchain community member group, which is over 200 business leaders, supply chain managers, innovation and strategy officers, and business analysts. And they have all agreed that supply chain and IoT is the most promising blockchain use case for them. So let's run through an example, right? Like, let's say you go to the grocery store, you get some prosciutto, and you want to know exactly where that prosciutto came from. So using blockchain, you can actually go directly from the farm where you have the pig, they register the pig, it goes onto the chain as it gets processed and then made into different products, delivered, going to the retailer, and finally to you. The whole process is recorded along the way. So when it finally reaches you, you can just track that whole thing by scanning a QR code. And the cases are not limited just to food. You can do this for beauty products. Let's say you want to know that your ingredients are organic from a certain country. You can use this for pharmaceuticals. So there are certain, quite expensive medications. You want to make sure that they are high quality, it's authentic. Some of them even need to be transported at a certain temperature. Making sure it's done, refrigerated, for instance. So you could have IoT devices prove that the whole way it was refrigerated. You can also use supply chain blockchain for things like ethical gold. Or diamonds. So De Beers actually just released in May that they have tracked 100 diamonds all the way from miner to the ultimate purchaser using a blockchain system. So here's another fun example. This is in around cattle ranching. So cattle farming, these are very old industries, right? With not a whole lot of innovation that's happened. So now when you take something as old as just raising cows and slaughtering them, you add blockchain and you have interesting things happen.
None of that information.
This is awesome. There we go.
Go Cowboys. Welcome to the digital age. In the blockchain world with beef, we're going to be the first in the United States.
Silicon Valley may be the U.S. hub for tech innovation, but Wyoming wants to be the hub for blockchain innovation.
We are a craft beef blockchain company, and we're here today tagging our first set of cattle with blockchain tags.
This is the first time we're doing it. I mean, we're literally adding cows on a blockchain.
It really is kind of the Old West meets the future.
I was considered once upon a time an early pioneer in the internet. We formed our first internet company in 1993 in the field of internet commerce. What they're doing here today is as dramatic and radical as what happened with the internet in 1993.
Cool. So now in terms of decentralized apps, there's this whole idea of Web 3.0, right? So Web 1.0 was the internet is born. Computers can talk to each other. Internet 2.0 is that people have now harnessed networks, social networks, and you'll see a lot of logos that you're familiar with up there. What's happened is some companies managed to take advantage of these network effects and have gained a lot of money and power that way. So Web 3.0 is about distributing that again. And so for every kind of area here with a 2.0 version, there is someone working on a 3.0 version. So let's talk about some specifics, right? Loyalty points. So American Express has a program called Membership Rewards. It basically rewards you for using your American Express card. And this program is quite large. It's in 21 different countries. And they announced this program using Hyperledger. And the idea is to keep all merchant and user data private, anonymized, and secure, and to increase transparency of what merchants are offering while offering better, kind of more tailored offerings to the customers. And so what they found so far is that it decreases the onboarding time for partners from months to a matter of weeks. And they're starting with a box partnership, but then want to open it up to all their partners, and they actually filed for a patent in October. In the realm of media content and ads, here are a few examples. So the line up there, that's the Brave browser. It is a browser that blocks ads, blocks trackers, but it also allows you to pay content producers that you feel have been valuable to you. Because you're browsing with this, right, you are taking out all the ads, so those content producers are not making money on ads, but you can choose to compensate them directly using the basic attention token or BAT. I think we already talked about Steam It a little bit earlier, but this way you get paid for creating good content, for being an active member of the community, upvoting good content in Steam coins. And then here, Poet, this is great for if you are a creator or if you're a publisher. So you can actually put your creations, the metadata, register it on their blockchain as, I'm the creator. And then now publishers can go on, look for things that they want to use, and then know that it was created by you and can pay you for that. We've also talked a little bit about CryptoKitties. So non-fungible tokens, the idea of that is that one item is not the same as another item. So here, in theory, if you've got €1 and you're trying to buy coffee, €1 coin here versus the other euro coin, it doesn't really matter which euro coin you use, so that means they're fungible. So non-fungible means that's not true, right? So the most kind of famous example is CryptoKitties. And so you have digital cats on the Ethereum blockchain. When you have 2 of them, you can breed them and get more digital cats, right? And so it's kind of silly, kind of fun, but the most expensive digital cat was sold for over $100,000. And that cat is now worth over $150,000. And in total, the amount of money people have spent on digital cats is $24 million. So, that's real money right there. And as mentioned before, now there's people building on top of CryptoKitties, so you can go and buy a hat for your cat, right? But something interesting about this is that you own the cat, but the cat owns the hat. So if you sell your cat, the hat goes with it. And so this is kind of maybe a fun example, but you could see that now if digital assets can own other digital assets, some interesting things can come from that. On a more serious note, in government and impact, there's a lot of work going on as well. So the state of Illinois, which is a state in the US, they are doing certificates of birth on the blockchain. In addition, they're also looking at what other government services can we use blockchain for, including things like welfare payments. Estonia has been a very early mover in the blockchain space. They started investigating right in the very beginning, 2009, and they've been deploying blockchain since 2012. You can also get e-residency in Estonia, which is pretty cool. Up over here, Moni, this is in Finland. So back to the kind of refugee use case, when refugees come to Finland, they're issued a card. It looks like a credit card. It serves as identity. It also serves as a place to get your benefits. Dubai, the UAE, has committed to passports on the blockchain. So they are expecting to roll the pilot out by 2020. And there is an effort by the Inter-American Development Bank and MIT DCI to help low-income Latin American farmers get access to loans based on blockchain-based inventory at warehouses. So here's a cool use case. This is called IDBox, and this is in Papua New Guinea. A lot of villages in Papua New Guinea are very remote, very isolated. To get to them, you have to sit on a dirt road for about 8 hours. And then when you get there, there's no electricity, there's no running water. So what IDBox does is it allows you to create a digital identity using just your finger. And it's connected to these solar panels right here, so that each villager who registers gets access to some free amount of solar credits that they can now trade with each other. So the cool thing about that, besides having the solar credits, is that now that you have identity, you can solve some things that have been problems for these villagers for a while. Like there have been a lot of land disputes because there's never been a record of who owns what piece of land. But now with identity, you can record that. And then you can see how this expands to things like healthcare. And here's a kind of closer view of the device. Another interesting thing, so Me Too, we've heard a lot about that, right? So this woman here, her name is Gail Yan. She went to Peking University. It's quite a sad story because while she was there, she was sexually harassed and raped by her professor for years before she finally committed suicide when she was 21. And so her story kind of resurfaced more recently when one of her old classmates wrote a piece kind of in memorandum of her friend. And this got picked up by current students, and they were quite obviously not happy about this. They wanted to know more. They wrote letters wanting explanations from Peking University, like what happened, like what have we changed so that this doesn't happen again? And the university did not like that very much. And there was a lot of censorship that attempted to happen. There was a lot of pressure put on. Yushin is the name of the woman who put up a letter around this incident. And she had her advisor come to her dorm room at 1 in the morning, kind of threatening her, saying, take down the letter, we could take away your diploma, things like that. And so what happened on April 23rd is some unidentified person put a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain for $0. The whole thing cost 50 cents. But in the metadata, they put the full transcription of the letter. So now, despite censorship attempts, the letter lives on, and it will forever. So you could see, for social change, blockchain could be very powerful as well. So mass adoption. We know that blockchain, while, you know, kind of cool, right? It's still not mainstream. So what do we need? What do we need to happen before it does become mainstream? So scalability, really huge. If you haven't heard about it already, you will hear about it a lot. So just to give you an idea of just you know, what this means, right? So these public chains, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, they can handle something like, you know, 8 to 30 transactions per second. Compare that to Visa, that handles 65,000 transactions per second. So you can just see the huge difference in this. And of course you can say, all right, well those are just for payments, and with blockchain you can do more than just payments, which is true. But if you just look at, you know, 65,000 versus 30, that's quite a big you know, gap in the middle there. The good news is there's a lot of smart people working on this, and I am optimistic that they'll come up with something. Design and reliability is another issue. So we're here in Italy. You guys know how to design things, right? Everything here is very beautiful, and people like to use them. Here are some screenshots, examples of, you know, companies in blockchain. It's not great, right? It kind of reminds me of the very early internet, when things just, you know, they didn't look great. And they're not easy to use, right? So see these long number things like grandma or grandpa is not gonna know what to do with that. Also in terms of reliability, some of these exchanges, sometimes they'll just break, sometimes they won't let you withdraw, and that's just how it is. And that needs to be fixed before we have mainstream people using it. More on the kind of ease of use case, right? Blockchain is built on some pretty hard concepts like cryptography. People get PhDs in this, right? But similar to TCP/IP, who knows how that works in the general population? Basically nobody. Yet we all know how to browse the internet. We all know how to use our apps. And so the holy grail of, you know, when blockchain will reach the masses is when you don't even know it's there. It's just running behind all the apps. You're just trying to do what you're doing, faster or cheaper. It just meets your needs somehow. You don't even need to know that it's running in the back. Maybe you don't even manage your private keys. So we want to go from hard things like this to easy things like apps on your phone. Then also, blockchain is a pretty new technology. It was first invented in 2009. So there's still a lot of work happening. And so while there's some stuff going on the app level, we're still building a lot of protocols. So, you know, before you have the cars on the street, you need to build the roads. And so right now, we're doing a lot of that building, you know, developer tools, things like that. So that is it. I am around for the rest of the day. I'd love to come talk to you, so please come find me. And thank you for having me.
Are there some questions?
Thanks for the information that you provide us. And I will know how they manage our identity in the blockchain, who store this information, and how they are, how it is the security compared with the centralized system. Because I understand that if they access a database and they take a public key, they could see all the transaction with this address, and they could profile you, and this is good for us.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not an expert on identity in particular, but what I do know is that they have these things called DIDs, which separates out all these different pieces, right, that you can give access to a particular piece. And so it's almost like a URL. You can access, you know, one particular thing.
There are other questions?
Here. Hi.
Hi.
So, very simple question. What are the, maybe you already addressed it, but what are the real benefits once all this will be in place? One will have mass adoption. I mean, in the transaction, it's probably very evident because you kind of do without banks and all that, you know, all those institutions that are in the intermediate path of transferring money and taking their part. So it will be basically democratizing transactions. But in all the rest, I mean, in all these aspects that you highlighted, what would be the, which will be the benefits?
Sure. Yeah. So when you have a decentralized system, one benefit is that there's no treasure trove of data sitting in one place for hackers to attack. So it's much harder to attack all of you individually versus this one central repository. So, you know, hacking becomes less of an issue. When you're talking about democratization, right, censorship is less of an issue. Lost my train of thought there. Sorry, need more coffee.
There are
yes, okay,
another question, only one.
Sorry, can I say one more thing? So, and you can't change it. So one thing about databases, right, is that you can go back and change things. But the thing is, like, once you put something on the blockchain, it's there. And then so if someone wants to go back later and try to, you know, corrupt it, you can't. It's not easy to do that.
Hi. Here I am. I'm there. Hi. So I do believe that in many of the applications that you showed us, there is a connection between in-chain and off-chain information. So what kind of guarantee you can provide to end users when information is off-chain, actually? I mean, you have basically pointers in-chain to off-chain information that, by the way, as the at least require trustness in who is storing such information.
Yeah, so if you're referring to kind of like real world versus digital world, right? Like anytime you have a real world, you know, human attestation of something, you introduce potential risk. Like in the kind of ethical gold example, right? Like if someone says, oh yeah, I got the gold this date or whatever. Anytime you have something like that, there is potential risk. But that is mitigated by the use of things like IoT devices, so that if it's, you know, interacting with a device that's just taking readings, that's automatically writing to the blockchain, that does help mitigate the risk. However, yes, that is a potential risk. It's just kind of compared to what we have now, it's a lot better. You know, you can scan things, you know, throughout a supply chain, but everyone along the process has their own system for doing so. So the blockchain allows everyone to use the same thing.
Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.